fishing. Crimpy's Fishing Show.
It's News Talk ZB. It is Saturday morning. It is time once again for the Fishing with Crimpy show. And in fact, it is kind of fishing without Crimpy today. Of course, last week we heard that he was off to Pitt Island. And of course, he's there now. But we thought we'd do the show from Pitt Island, second largest island in the Chatham archipelago, isn't it, Crimpy?
It is indeed. And what an archipelago it is. I flew out to Pitt Island the other day and struck one of the calmest days that they've had, and one of the clearest days, I might add, too. So we got to see the whole vista from the air, and the pilot did tell us when we touched down that they've only lost one aircraft so far. Unfortunately, it wasn't ours.
That's not this week, is it?
No, it was back in the mid-90s, so there's a bit of a relief. But he did tell me that they are bringing 20-engined job out here because it makes the punters a little bit more comfortable knowing that there are two motors holding it up when they can see great whites swimming beneath the wings.
Wow. And you can actually...
Yeah, we didn't get to see any, though, but apparently it's a little bit early for them. They come about October, they start moving around. But we have seen plenty of other things. Pitt Island, I tell you, I have to say, we spoke to Brent last week, I think it was, about Pitt Island, and I have to say, it lives up to its reputation. You wouldn't go to the Chathams without going to Pitt Island and making a point of going over there. It is really sensational.
Now, how far exactly is Pitt Island from the Chathams? What sort of time was that flight?
Oh, it's only about 20 minutes, 15 minutes once we got airborne. It's only 12 miles coast tip to coast tip. But it's an island roughly the size of Great Barrier, a little bit smaller than Great Barrier, but bigger than Waiheke. Very similar to sort of the Mootri area. It's a volcanic island, but it's undulating. It's mainly covered by grass, although originally back in the 1840s when it was first settled, it was all predominantly covered by bush, and over the decades, they milled most of the island, so there are only remnant forests left now. So much of it's pasture land, but we're staying at Flowerpot Bay, which has a bit of history in itself, and that's the site where Brent's Lodge is that he told you about, and he's not kidding when he said it's 500 square metres, and the wine cellar incidentally is 400 square metres, so we've got 100 metres of living space. I've found the wine cellar already.
Excellent.
But he's built it right on the side of the original homestead, so there's quite a bit of history here, and the original homestead was built in 1843 out of punga and thatch, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I'm just looking at a photograph of it now, and when they added the main living part several years later, they built it out of wood because a ship very kindly wrecked itself on the reef in front, and that was the wreck of the Franklin, and that gave them the materials to build the house. So many houses later, we have Flowerpot Bay Lodge, and it is absolutely stunning.
Well, one thing because I did a bit of research, you'd be quite happy to know before we did the show.
I'm thrilled.
One thing I found out is that Pitt Island was actually inhabited by the Moriori.
Yeah, indeed, and I've seen the statue of the last Moriori, Solomon, who died, I think, back in I haven't done that much research, but back in the 50s, I think.
Oh, maybe. Really?
And but it's quite a fascinating place. There's a lot of history here.
Yeah.
But I have to say, people describe the Chatham Islands group as New Zealand 30 years ago, and I would concur with that. I'd say it's probably New Zealand 30 to 50 years ago, but when you arrive here, you're struck immediately by a sense of serenity. It's just, there's sort of like an aura of calm about the islands, and I think it's just that's what makes it unique and special. And certainly you switch to Chatham Islands time the moment you arrive here. You feel the stress of civilization slip away, and while it's sort of the tail end of winter and it is a bit cool, it's pretty similar to home in that respect. But a great place to visit.
Excellent. All right, well, we're going to go into a short break here, Crimpy, but what I want to do is, after we do the tides next, I want to ask you about your hunting, because that's what you're over there for, and we'll see what you've picked up. more to come. Crimpy, we've got Crimpy on the line. He's at Pitt Island doing some hunting and fishing. So we'll catch up with him in just a tick. But if you are heading out on the water today, or you're going to dip the net in, Nelson high tide today is 5 to 11. It is 4.2 metre high tide, pretty big. 20 to 11, Havelock, your high tide is there, 3.1 metres. Crusel's high tide, quarter to 11 this morning, 4.5. That's a big tide. Stevens Island, 17 past 10 this morning, just after quarter past, 2.8 metre. Westport and Greymouth, your tide again, tide for tides. 5 to 12, 3.2 metre tide for both Westport and Greymouth. You would have got that if you were in the studio, wouldn't you, Crimpy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think you did tremendously well. And the high tide here on Pitt Island was about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Not that you really need to know that, but
no. Well,
one thing about the tide over here, Regan, is the clarity I can't get over. The water over here is almost gin clear. You can stand on the wharf and you can see the fish beneath you. Wow. And Daniel Crimp is having an absolute field day. Now, when I spoke earlier about the history of Pitt Island, there's a bit of history with the show too. You might not be aware of it, but we have probably a number of fans, including my mother and father.
Yep.
But the show has had a stalwart, if you like, a fan that has been dedicated to fishing with Crimpy since we've been going for the last 20 years, every Saturday morning. And I'd like to dedicate this show to Mum's very dear friend Jan. Now, Jan, if you're listening, this show is for you, and it's all the way from Pitt Island. So I hope you're sitting up in bed with a cup of tea, because this is your show this morning. And I guess, Regan, you want to know about what's happening on the hunting front.
Well, I do want to know. What is it truly that easy to pick something up over there?
Well, I tell you what, people that have a notion that there's no point in going and hunting a sheep because they're dozy old animals like you see in a paddock at home, dispel that misconception straight away, because these are unique animals and they are very much like a cross between deer and chamois. Now, I'll tell you why. The reason is that they are truly wild animals. Now, they're the descendants of the flock that Samuel Marsden brought to New Zealand in 1814. Mm-hmm. And they're called the Spanish or Saxony Merino. And they're very much a time capsule.
A time capsule?
That's a time capsule. Now, you wouldn't think a sheep is a time capsule, would you?
Well,
but
no.
I say this for a very good reason, because they're fascinating animals. They're very wild. They're difficult to hunt, because if they smell you, see you, or even detect that you're there, they're often a flash, just like a red deer or a fallow. They're like chamois and tar simply because they love living around the bluffs, and there's some very steep bluffs that drop into the ocean around Pitt Island. That's where they've been driven over the years by the area being turned into farming. So the remnant flock is sort of poked down the southern end of Pitt Island, and they live in very steep country, so they're very agile, they're difficult to get to, and they're flighty. But the reason I say that they're like a time capsule is because they are direct descendants of that first shipment of sheep that came to New Zealand, and they haven't been modified by being crossed by modern breeds of sheep. And you can sit and you can compare them and look at the genetic strain and just see how totally different the modern sheep are to the old sheep that from our homeland, the olden times. And these sheep, they're completely lice resistant. They molt their wool. They're foot rot resistant. They're very, very hardy animals, but they don't domesticate that easily. And you can see that the modern sheep are very dozy, very tame, and very fat and lazy in comparison. So a very fascinating breed of animal.
And what do they taste like?
Absolutely stunning. I'm going to bring a leg home for you, mate.
Excellent. I could do it with
I'll
another
tell you
leg.
what, Brent's the man to see at Flowerpot Lodge. Brent and Bernie, they're absolutely fantastic hosts. And if you're thinking of putting something on your bucket list, Chatham Islands has to be one of the things. But I'll tell you what, make sure that you allow yourself a week so you can come over for 2 or 3 days to spend in Flowerpot Bay at the lodge. It's something that you need to do. It's really fantastic. And as soon as we landed the plane, we hadn't even got back to the lodge, and Brent was, righto, we're going hunting, so I had to get dressed on the airstrip, and we're off hunting, chasing the sheep, and we had cold mutton sandwiches for lunch, and they with Bernie's chutney, and it was sensational. But I'll tell you how the hunt went, what happened, and why Daniel Crimp is smiling right after this next break.
You're fishing with Crimpy today because I'm here in the studio and Crimpy's on Pitt Island.
Indeed, and I have to say, while I've dedicated the show to Jan, and I hope you're listening, Jan, I want to say a special hello to Annette and Anna, and that I will miss them terribly, but they will get used to life without me eventually. And Regan, good luck with the show.
Thank you.
I'm staying put on Pitt Island.
Well, you know, that's... well, what are we going to do?
Can I have your truck?
Can I have your truck?
Daniel Crim, he's celebrating his birthday over here in a couple of days' time, so it's a bit of a birthday treat for him. Now, he didn't know when he was coming to Pitt Island what was in store for him. He thought he was just coming with Dad and hopefully getting a bit of fishing. And when we arrived in the Chathams, we got off the plane, went to the hotel, which is absolutely a beautiful location. It's been refurbished 4 years ago, so it's immaculately set out. It's a lovely place to stay. Very reminiscent of the Bay of Islands of Russell, so it's got that tranquility about it. We'd no sooner put the bags in the room, Dad, when can I go fishing? So we had to unpack the rod straight down to the wharf, and he was into it. Well, he got me up at 5 o'clock in the morning the next morning to go fishing down the wharf, so he could get a fish in before we came to Pitt Island. And as we speak, he's off down the wharf fishing now. No breakfast for that boy. He's keen as mustard, and he's just enjoying himself like you wouldn't believe. Now, we went fishing with... we went hunting with Bernie the moment the plane landed. I had to get dressed in the middle of the airstrip, and we're off chasing the Saxony Merino, beautiful reserve. It's a country like you've never seen before. It's just absolutely spectacular. Beautiful glades, punga ferns, and the best of it was it's managed by Doc, and we got to ride the mechanical Clydesdales. Now, all the hunting's done by mechanical Clydesdales, both horses named Honda, and we rode these through the reserve, through the swamps, through the ferns, and I had an absolute ball. And we saw quite a number of sheep, and as I said earlier, they were quite flighty. Well, about an hour or two into the hunt, we were looking for some mutton because I did promise you I'd bring you some mutton home, Regan.
Yep.
And we spotted this beautiful trophy ram right down in the creek and executed a wonderful stalk. And once we got within range, I put Daniel Crimp behind the rifle, and for his birthday present, he managed to secure himself his very first trophy. So he got a beautiful merino ram to go on the wall. So he's one happy boy, I can tell you that.
Oh, I bet. And I was actually, during my research, I had a look at one of these sheep that are on Pitt Island, and they actually have got some beautiful big horns. You don't see them really on the sheep around here.
No, and that's another unique thing about them. This is why I said that they're a bit of a time capsule. They have them on game parks and that in New Zealand, but hunting them, they are a truly exceptional trophy if you're into trophy hunting or if you're just into hunting in general, because there's so much history with them. They have a story to tell, and they are out here in the wild. So it's a whole adventure to get here, then it's an adventure again to go hunting. And it's something that you just can't get at home anymore. So it's one of these sort of like last bastions, if you like. It's one of the last great adventures. And if you want to sample something like that, there are very few of them left. You know, in New Zealand we have Fiordland, and the Three Kings at the top of the North Island, and Renfurley Banks, and they're getting overpopulated. Well, if you want an adventure, if you want to get out and sample something that's like New Zealand 50 years ago, then the Chatham Islands and Pitt Islands are the place to go. And if you're into your hunting, put it on the bucket list to come out and hunt some of these Pitt Island rams, because they make exceptional trophies and they are a very worthy animal to hunt. But failing that, you can take home some meat, and the meat is nothing like the mutton that we have. It's flavoursome, it's very, very lean. They're not high in fat like the mutton at home, and just ever so tasty. Oh,
looking forward to trying that out. All right, well, you've got a big day planned ahead of you anyway, Mr. Crimp, so I'll let you go and enjoy yourself. A big happy birthday to young Daniel as well.
Oh, indeed, and when he comes in, I'll pass on your kind regards, and all things being equal, I'll send you a postcard from the Chathams sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Crimpy. You have fun.
All right, bye now.
All right, and that's all we've got time for on Fishing with Crimpy. Hopefully, by the sounds of things, I don't think he is going to be back next week, but hopefully Crimpy's back next week. Have a good weekend. I'll see you next time.